What's going on, everybody? Welcome back. So today I am bringing you nothing but hard choices because we're going to be going over the SIG RXP X series versus the M&P 2.0 Core series. There is a ton of good about both of these things, and with all of the offerings we got out there now, especially with the optics ready stuff, it is just getting more and more difficult to pick and choose which one is going to work for you. Now, if you want the in-depth review of either of those, I will link those down below, but this is going to be a side-by-side comparison. I'm not going to get into how the trigger works and explain all those things like I do in the full breakdowns. Check those links down below for that. What we are going to do is compare these head-to-head, talk about the good, the bad, what they both have, what they could have, what one has over the other, all those things that you may want to know, so you can see them side by side if these are two that you are looking at right now. Well, if this is your first time here, go ahead and get subbed up, get belled up, turn those notifications down there to all notifications on, and I don't know, see what happens, because some people are telling me flat out doesn't work. If you like anything that's going on here, give the video a thumbs up. Let's take a look at that M&P. It's just absolutely smooth, but what about that RXP X carry? Like I said, nothing but tough choices here today between the Core and the RXP or the X series here. So short of letting you guys touch these things, which I literally can't, showing you these guys up close, you can really make a decision between one or the other, and then getting them in your hand is going to help you out the most. So let's go ahead and get into these things, talk about the specs, do some trigger pulls, do all the things you guys want to see right now. All right, let's jump right into the X series versus the Core 2.0 series. So both of these come in various sizes. You've got a full size, a VTAC, a carry, a compact. Over here on the M&P Core 2.0s, you're going to have this version, which is the full size grip, 4 1/4 barrel. You've got the 5-inch, and you've got a compact as well. So multiple different options. We're just going to go over these families and generally what you're going to get with them. So going from magwell to muzzle, just like we always do, let's start off with the SIG and those mags. You're going to get the 17 rounders, and you can buy the additional factory 21 round 2A Pez dispensers. Love these things, great mags, absolutely outstanding there. Talking about the magwell on there, that is a factory SIG magwell right there. They're available from SIG. You can put them on the X series grips except for the compact. It fits quite well, does a great job funneling that magazine in there. Gives you everything you need, adds a little bit of weight to it as well, helps control that recoil impulse. Coming up, we've got a much less aggressive grip than, say, a Glock. We've got that nice kind of sandpaper texture all the way around. Couple gaps here and there, you know, on the sides right here. But overall, very, very much a nice texture to it at all. We do have a single finger groove right here. I'm generally not a fan of finger grooves, but that one actually feels quite good. We do have a swappable magazine release. You can go from one side to the other if you're right-handed or wrong-handed, completely up to you. And of course with SIG, we've got that decent beaver tail back there. Kind of gets a little bit pointy in the rear right here. You don't really feel it. If it was a little wider, might be a little bit better. Moving up into the X frame right there, you will see a nice depression right there, which is going to keep your hands from accidentally activating the slide stop slide release, which is ambi as well. So you've got a good opportunity to run this from both sides if you are into it. Moving forward, takedown lever. Got a standard pick rail with multiple slots up here. You can see I got that TLR7A on there, great light. Getting down into the trigger. I like the trigger guard on this one because it's nice and long and my finger's not gonna slip up over it once we start running and doing cool things out there. The X trigger is pretty good. It is a flat trigger. We will do trigger pulls here in just a minute on this thing once we get done with everything. So coming up into the slide now, very standard backplate, direct mounted mill here for the Romeo 1 Pro or Delta Point Pro. All right, it's not a plate system. You can buy aftermarket plates, but this is directly cut for that optic style. We got front serrations, rear serrations, of course on both sides, external extractor, standard barrel, and on this version it did come with the tall suppressor height X-ray factory SIG sights on it. It's nicely chamfer cut all the way around here across the top if you're into press checking. A little bit of chamfer work up there on the nose for holstering and unholstering, but a little bit blocky, which SIG is kind of known for. So let's move right into the M&P 2.0 core right here. We're going to get the 17 round magazines. Definitely good stuff. They are both metal. Coming up into the texture on the M&P, some of the best grip texture out there, at least in my opinion, on the market. It's very much like a, I don't know, probably a 300 to 500 grit sandpaper, but it doesn't tear your hands up all the way around. I mean, almost no gaps in it. And of course, we got the interchangeable back straps here. If you got a little bit bigger of a palm, you can get a little bit bigger of a palm swell in there, fit it as you need. Whereas the SIG, you don't get that option. Your module is your module. Moving up, we do have a swappable magazine release there, single-sided. And up a little further, we do have an ambidextrous slide stop slide release, pretty tight to the frame on that one. Moving forward from there, we're going to have a standard pick rail with multiple slots as well. Get a Streamlight, just a TLR1 on this one. Takedown lever like the SIG. External extractor on this side. Pretty much business as usual for a polymer striker fired setup. Moving into the trigger. So SIG's got the flat one and Smith has that kind of gnarly hinge design in it right there. The tactile feel of this trigger shoe is just not great because it's very, very sloped and kind of angular, and it kind of just grabs your finger if you've got thicker fingers a little bit weird. Again, when we get into trigger pulls here in just a minute. Moving up into the slide, we got great kind of fish scale slide serrations right here. That's kind of the design they have. Minimal ones up front. They do have models that now they come up all the way up over. Just depends on which version you get. Moving into upstairs here, you can see the slide is kind of narrowed down right into this section, goes forward, and just very blocky at the front. A little bit more blocky than the SIG is, but it's not going to be a problem at all. We do get the taller suppressor height sights on this one as well, and these ones are Trijicon, if I'm correct. Yep, these are the Trijicon ones. Everything else is going to be pretty much striker fire as usual. External extractor, standard looking barrel. You have a port across the top right there if you're a loaded chamber indicator. So you can see if you've got a brass casing in there. Might be a little bit more difficult if you're using some metal. Optics mounting is a plate system, so a modular optics system on this one, which is, you know, some people like it, some people don't like it. Really up to you, kind of how that goes. Someone did tell me, correct me if I'm wrong below, that these are now coming with plastic plates. That one, as you can see, is definitely metal. So let me know if those plates are different. What we're going to do now, let's do some pull tests. If you want to see the individual reviews on these and the breakdowns and where I go through the triggers and how all the triggers work and all that stuff, I will link that down below. But let's go ahead and do some trigger pulls and we'll see what we got here. The X series right here does have a little bit better of a trigger than the regular P320s. So you can see, and these are both well fired. There's well over a couple thousand rounds through the SIG, probably closer to 3,000 to 4,000 now. And getting close to the 2,000 mark on the Smith. So you can see that one's about 4 pounds and 6, about 4 pounds, 4 ounces, maybe 4 pounds 6. We'll do a couple pulls. And yes, I pull low on the shoe because I'm working leverage. And that's where I try to get my finger because it provides a better trigger pull. About the exact same right there, you can see. Let's go ahead and talk about the Smith. And then we'll talk more about how these triggers actually feel, not tactile wise, but how that break actually feels. So right about the same on that one. I'm gonna reset that one and we're gonna do that again. It's kind of hard on that trigger because of how curved it is. Almost exactly the same as the SIG, so about 4 pounds and 6 ounces. So I do pull low on the trigger shoe, guys. I've explained it before, but the lower you are, the lighter it gets. Work the leverage. It's gonna give you a better trigger pull. Well, let's go ahead and talk about the good, the bad, and talk about if there's one trigger that feels better than the other and everything else you may want to know if you are interested in either the Core or the X Series, RXP, whichever one they've got, because there's a lot of changes that have happened with these. Well, that's just a lot of good stuff with both of those. So let's talk a little bit of that good and bad, and let's talk about that SIG first. So good stuff about the SIG, the modularity, awesome, absolutely awesome what you can do with the modularity. Between going from module to module, size to size, using a short slide, putting a comp on it with a full-size module, a ton of stuff you can do with the modularity. The trigger in the X series is definitely solid and not one to throw by the wayside. The standard P320 curve trigger, just not my thing, but the X series specifically has an absolutely outstanding trigger. The angles on the 320 in the X series, again, great. Now the normal grip module for the P320 kind of feels a little bit like ballish or stress ballish in my hand. So the X series is definitely where it's at for me when it comes to the SIG. And of course, the performance. So if you haven't seen my SIG videos, you can check them all out. There's a noticeable difference in performance for the SIG, at least for me. I can find myself being a little bit more accurate, a little bit more faster now that I've been using them longer and longer. It just seems to be I perform a little bit better with it, and that can be the difference in just 1 degree in a grip angle that can really either make it or break it for you. All right, so if I had to nitpick on the SIG a little bit, we're gonna talk about 2 things. One is they just keep changing things. They've had like a bunch of different trigger styles in there, a bunch of different designs, a bunch of different weights. They've got several different things going on there. And of course they did have to redo the disconnector design and send slides back in and do some mill work. But this is the current generation of them. But there are several different things going on out there as far as the SIG design. A lot of inline changes going on there, which you may or may not notice, but could throw you for a little bit of a loop because the triggers feel definitely way different. And the other thing with the SIG, and it continues in the trigger, the brake on the trigger is a little bit interesting. So it kind of just like, it just kind of happens. It's not that really tactile, aggressive sounding brake that you may get in some other striker fired setups. It just kind of happens and you gotta get used to it. And it does definitely not have that kind of throw your finger out reset that some others like the Glock or even the M&P has a little bit more of, but it's still a solid setup. At least the X1 is. Like I said, not a fan of the curved trigger. Now, when it comes to that bad boy right there, the M&P, there is a lot of good here. That grip texture, in my opinion, probably the best grip texture there is out there. They've managed to find the perfect feeling without being too aggressive texture, and they just wrapped that whole grip in it, which is absolutely awesome. It's got those really good angles, far less aggressive than like a Glock, which may be a little bit too much of an angle. And for most people, you're going to be really high on that Glock. You have to really kind of force it down. The M&P and the SIG both have better angles. Now the trigger brake on the M&P is definitely solid. I don't like the way the trigger shoe feels, but the actual brake and reset is quite nice on it. It's got a very, very minimal creep as compared to the SIG, which has a little bit more, and it's got a solid brake, so you know when it's gonna go off and you know you have a good positive reset, a little bit more so than the SIG. And again, if I have to nitpick on the M&P, there's gonna be 2 things we're gonna talk about here. One is that hinged trigger. I just hate the way that that hinged trigger feels on my finger. I always end up grabbing it right there. I always end up hitting it on the edge of my finger and then it swoops my finger in like that. I far prefer a flat trigger or something that's just not as aggressively angled. The other thing with the M&P is the guard right there. So if you'll see, my hands really start to slip up, especially when I'm getting sweaty, because that trigger guard slopes back so fast right here as compared to the SIG. That may not be a problem for everybody, but if you've got larger mitts, you may see that kind of starting to come up and present itself as an issue, especially once you start sweating and moving around and that gun kind of wants to walk around a little bit in your hand, which is where that grip texture comes in. You can cause you to slip a little bit forward on the guard. That's just something I noticed. So that's my really nitpicking it for the M&P. Either way, both of those have a ton of positive and very few and very minor, what even I guess could be negatives, but more like preference issues. I will say personally for me, the SIG is easier to run. Part of the reason for the SIG being easier to run, the factory magwell and the slide stop slide release controls on the SIG are far more pronounced and you're able to activate them a lot easier than on the M&P because of just how tight they are to the slide right there. So I find myself being a little bit accurate, a little bit faster, and having a little bit of an easier time running that SIG 320X as compared to the M&P. Again, that is a personal thing, but it just seems to work out a little bit better for me. Now let's talk about that price. So between the M&P, like this one right here, and the RXP X Carry right here, which apparently they're not selling this one right now except for like government entities or something, which is kind of weird. Again, talking about those changes that SIG has been doing. It's kind of all over the place. So the SIG RXP X Series like this, that come with the optic and that shroud, These are like 1,000 right now ish. The prices are kind of weird. I've seen them for like 9-ish, and then I've seen them as high as like 1,200 on certain sites. But it really depends, because the full size one doesn't come with the shroud. And I want to say that one was like right around 950-ish the last time I looked. But again, prices have been jumping all over. And the MSRP really doesn't seem to matter most times, because you can usually find it cheaper when things aren't crazy. And then when they're crazy, it's generally going to be a little over MSRP. When it comes to the M&P, depending on the model, the Performance Center ported version, the version like this, or the 5-inch or the compact, they've been around 690s to 750 and up. So the Performance Center version was like 850. So it kind of depends on which option you want to go with and where your budget aligns. The SIG comes with the Romeo 1 Pro, may not be your chosen optic. Where the M&P is a modular plate system, you pick your optic and you have to get the plate for that one. Really going to be up to you. And again, someone told me that the new M&Ps were coming with polymer plates. If that's true, definitely let me know in the comments. Mine is metal, and I bought that not too long ago, but things do change. Well, that is what I have for you guys all today. I hope you guys enjoyed learning about the M&P and the RXP X series. Like I said, nothing but tough choices here. I find it a little bit easier with that SIG, but don't get me wrong, I really do love the M&P as well. They are great choices. It's all about what fits you. It's like a car. You have got to test drive these things. Make sure you guys get subbed up, get belled up, turn the notification icons on. And if you like either of these sweet honeys right here, you give this video a like. You guys get out there, have some fun on the range. Remember, if you stay ready, you ain't got to get ready. And I will see you guys on the next one.